Are you kidding me right now? The senior flight attendant's voice cracks through the cabin like a whip. What the hell is that smell? This isn't a bus station. This isn't a charity line. This is a plane. Every head turns. She stands in the aisle, heels planted wide, arms crossed, staring straight down at a black teenage girl seated by the window. The girl freezes mid-motion, a small plastic food container resting in her hands, the lid barely open. Seriously? The attendant continues, loud, sharp, enjoying the attention. Did you just decide to bring your whole neighborhood kitchen on board? A few passengers chuckle uncomfortably. Most look away. The girl's name is Ava Johnson, 16 years old, dark-skinned, slim, with neat box braids pulled back carefully. She wears a faded gray hoodie, clean sneakers, and the guarded posture of someone taught early not to draw attention. This is her first flight alone. Her mother woke before dawn to cook that meal, rice, vegetables, chicken, because Ava gets anxious when she doesn't eat. Ava's fingers tighten around the container. I was just sharing, she says quietly. Sharing? The attendant scoffs. With that? She gestures sharply to the elderly woman seated beside Ava. The attendant is Linda Hawthorne, mid-40s, white, immaculately groomed, hair pulled tight into a bun that hasn't moved in years. She's been with the airline over 2 decades and wears authority like armor. To her, rules are weapons, and she enjoys choosing when to use them. And who told you that was allowed? Linda continues. Because last I checked, we don't permit homemade food exchanges, especially food we can't verify. Her eyes flick down Ava's hoodie, her braids, her skin. We don't know what's in it, Linda adds pointedly, or how clean it is. Ava swallows. I checked the rules, Ava says softly. It's sealed. I wasn't bothering anyone. Linda laughs, not kindly. Oh, sweetheart, she says, leaning closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound dangerous. Rules aren't for everyone to interpret. They're enforced by people who know better. She straightens and raises her voice again. And let's be honest, she adds, we all know how this goes if we don't stop it early. People start thinking they can do whatever they want, bring whatever they want, act like they own the place. The word people lands heavy. The elderly woman shifts, her hands trembling slightly. Please, she says gently. She was only being kind. I wasn't feeling well. Linda doesn't even look at her. Ma'am, she snaps, stay out of this. Then she turns back to Ava, eyes cold. You kids always play innocent, she says. Always some excuse, always acting surprised when someone finally tells you no. Ava's chest tightens. I'm sorry, Ava whispers. I didn't mean... That's when Linda loses patience. She snatches the container from Ava's hands. No, Ava gasps. The lid pops open as Linda crushes it into a trash bag, rice spilling onto the aisle, sauce splattering against the carpet and someone's shoe. The sound is sharp, final, deliberate. There, Linda says flatly. Problem solved. Ava stares at the mess. Food her mother cooked with care now smeared under strangers' feet. Phones come out. Someone whispers, that was harsh. Another mutters, she's just a kid. Linda turns slowly, daring anyone to challenge her. This is what happens when standards slip, she announces. When people think kindness excuses ignorance. She looks back at Ava one last time, her voice dropping into something crueler. Next time, she says quietly, learn where you belong before you embarrass yourself. The cabin goes silent. Ava doesn't cry. She doesn't yell. She doesn't move. She simply nods once, slow, mechanical, as if accepting a punishment she never earned. Beside her, the elderly woman closes her eyes, not in shame, in memory. Something in her expression hardens, not with anger, but with resolve. The intercom chimes. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice announces, we'll be pushing back shortly. The plane begins to move. Passengers settle back into their seats, eager to forget what they witnessed. But something has already been broken, and it isn't just a food container. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. Ava stares straight ahead, breathing slowly, the way her mother taught her. She doesn't know it yet, but the woman beside her is watching everything. And this flight, this airline, has just made the worst mistake of its existence. If you have ever been humiliated for showing kindness, if you have ever been judged before you were known, then what happens next with this elderly woman will leave you speechless. Like, subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices to follow what unfolds next, because the cruelty doesn't stop, but it starts to feel watched. The cabin settles into a false calm. Seatbelts click, overhead lights dim. The aisle where the food was destroyed has been wiped clean so thoroughly it's as if the mess never existed. The stain is gone. The smell is gone. The evidence has been erased. Ava remains. She sits rigid, eyes fixed on the seat back in front of her, hands folded tightly in her lap, as though holding something invisible. Her palms are still warm from the container that's no longer there. Her ears ring with the echo of laughter that wasn't really laughter. The kind people make when they want to be on the right side of power. Across the aisle, a man in a pressed blazer glances at her, then looks away quickly, embarrassed by his own curiosity. 2 rows up, a woman whispers something to her partner. He shrugs. Someone scrolls through their phone and chuckles at a video with the volume too loud. Normal life resumes. That's how cruelty survives. The drink cart rattles down the aisle. Linda returns with it, posture relaxed now, confidence restored. She moves like someone who believes the moment has already passed, and she has won simply by outlasting it. Her smile is professional again, polished and practiced. She stops at Ava's row. She doesn't speak immediately. She looks. Her gaze moves slowly. Ava's hoodie, her braids, her hands, then flicks to the elderly woman beside her, lingering just long enough to communicate irritation. Finally, Linda sighs. "You know," she says conversationally, as if sharing a harmless observation, "this whole thing could have been avoided." Ava doesn't look up. "If people understood how to behave in public spaces," Linda continues, tapping the cart lightly, "we wouldn't have these awkward moments." The elderly woman turns her head. "You created the moment," she says calmly. Linda's smile tightens. "With respect, ma'am," she replies, voice sweetened with condescension, "this doesn't concern you." She gestures vaguely toward Ava without looking at her. "I'm responsible for maintaining order on board, and when certain passengers don't know boundaries, it puts everyone else in an uncomfortable position." She scans the cabin as if expecting agreement. A man nods faintly. Someone else stares straight ahead. Silence votes in her favor. Linda keeps going. "This airline has standards," she says. "We don't just let anyone turn the cabin into whatever they want. This isn't a backyard. This isn't a potluck. This is a regulated environment." Her eyes narrow slightly. "And rules exist for a reason." Ava inhales slowly. She counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, just like her mother taught her. "I followed the rules," Ava says quietly, finally lifting her eyes. "I checked before we boarded." Linda looks almost surprised that Ava has spoken. Then she laughs, a short, dismissive sound. "Oh, honey," she says, "rules aren't just words on a website. They're judgment calls, and those calls are made by people who understand how things work." She leans in just a little, lowering her voice. Not enough to be private, just enough to be poisonous. "And let's be honest," she adds, "if we didn't enforce rules strictly, we'd have chaos. People would start thinking they can bring whatever they want, sit wherever they want, act however they want." She pauses deliberately. "We've seen how that goes." The implication is sharp and unmistakable. The elderly woman's fingers curl slightly in her lap. "Kindness isn't chaos," she says. Linda straightens, the smile gone now. "Kindness doesn't override policy," she snaps. "And encouraging behavior like that," she gestures again, toward Ava, "is irresponsible." She turns her attention back to Ava fully now. "I suggest you sit quietly," Linda says briskly, "and don't cause any more scenes for the rest of the flight." She looks to the elderly woman once more. "And if you're feeling unwell, we can arrange medical assistance when we land, but please don't encourage actions that compromise safety." The message is clear. You are the problem. She is the trigger, and I am the authority. Linda pushes the cart forward, heels clicking away. Ava's shoulders sag just slightly, not in defeat, but in exhaustion. The kind that comes from realizing no explanation will ever be enough. Beside her, the elderly woman watches Linda retreat down the aisle. She doesn't look angry. She looks analytical. She reaches into the pocket of her cardigan and removes a small notebook, the edges worn soft with use. She opens it carefully and writes a few lines with deliberate strokes. Ava notices the movement. "What are you writing?" she asks quietly. The woman smiles faintly. "Observations," she replies. Ava nods, unsure why the word feels heavier than it should. Minutes pass. The plane hums steadily, slicing through the clouds. Outside the window, sunlight glints off the wing, blindingly bright, indifferent to what's happening inside the cabin. Then the turbulence begins. Not violent, just enough to unsettle. The plane dips slightly. Overhead compartments creak. A few passengers gasp. Someone grips an armrest. The seatbelt sign flashes back on. Linda's voice comes over the intercom. Calm, professional, controlled. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. This is completely normal." Normal. The word lands bitterly in Ava's chest. The elderly woman closes her notebook and rests it in her lap. Her gaze sweeps the cabin slowly. The passengers who watched, the ones who recorded, the ones who looked away. The crew members who stayed silent, the systems humming smoothly above it all. Her eyes settle briefly on the airline logo stitched into the seat in front of her. Her jaw tightens, not with anger, with decision. Ava turns back to the window, watching clouds drift past, unaware that something fundamental has shifted, quietly, invisibly, irreversibly. The plane continues its journey, but somewhere beyond the cabin walls, accountability is already boarded, and it's not waiting for permission to land. The turbulence passes, but the tension doesn't. The seatbelt sign clicks off with a hollow chime, and a collective exhale ripples through the cabin. People shift in their seats. Conversations resume in whispers. The plane settles into cruising altitude, as if the earlier cruelty was nothing more than mild air pockets. Linda, however, is not finished. She reappears 10 minutes later with another attendant trailing behind her, younger, quieter, eyes darting nervously. Linda's expression is tight, rehearsed, resolute, the look of someone who has decided to teach a lesson. She stops directly in front of Ava's row. "Ma'am," Linda says loudly, addressing no one in particular. "I've just been informed that you were warned earlier about inappropriate behavior." Ava looks up slowly. "I didn't—" Linda raises a hand. "No interruptions," she snaps. "You've already caused enough disruption." Passengers look up. Phones lift again. A man across the aisle leans forward slightly, sensing drama. Linda continues, voice projecting. "For the safety and comfort of all passengers," she announces, "we have to take additional precautions when someone refuses to follow protocol." Ava's heart begins to pound. "I followed the rules," she says again, quietly but clearly. "I didn't mean any harm." Linda laughs, sharp and dismissive. "That's the problem," she replies. "You never think you're doing harm. That's how it always starts." She turns to the younger attendant beside her. "Make a note," Linda says. "Passenger in 22B. Non-compliant. Potential disturbance." Ava's breath catches. I'm not a disturbance, she says, her voice trembling despite her effort to keep it steady. Linda leans closer now, lowering her voice just enough to sound threatening. Then stop acting like one. The elderly woman rises slightly in her seat. This is unnecessary, she says firmly. You're humiliating her. Linda straightens and turns on her. Ma'am, she says coldly, you've involved yourself enough. If you continue interfering, I'll have no choice but to report you as well. The younger attendant shifts uncomfortably. A ripple of unease moves through the cabin. Someone mutters, this has gone too far. Another whispers, she's just a kid. Linda hears none of it, or pretends not to. She gestures toward Ava's empty tray table. You brought unauthorized items on board, she says. You disrupted cabin order, and now you're challenging crew authority. She ticks the accusations off on her fingers. That's 3 strikes. Ava's eyes sting, but she refuses to let the tears fall. I said I'm sorry, she whispers. Linda smirks. Sorry doesn't clean carpets, she says. Sorry doesn't undo contamination. She glances at the aisle where the food once spilled, now spotless. And sorry doesn't teach responsibility. The words land like stones. Ava feels every eye on her, the weight of judgment pressing down, flattening her into something smaller than she is. Her shoulders curl inward instinctively. Beside her, the elderly woman reaches out, gripping Ava's hand. Linda notices. Do not touch her, she snaps. The elderly woman doesn't let go. That's enough, the woman says, her voice low but unwavering. You're crossing a line. Linda's eyes flash with irritation. You don't get to decide where the line is, she replies. I do. She straightens again, turning to address the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, Linda says loudly, we appreciate your patience while we handle this situation. Rest assured, we take safety and hygiene very seriously. She looks back at Ava. Some people, she adds pointedly, just don't understand boundaries unless they're enforced. The younger attendant finally speaks, voice barely above a whisper. Linda. Maybe we should... Linda shoots her a look that silences her instantly. Ava's chest feels tight, like the air itself has thinned around her. She stares straight ahead, breathing slowly, 4 counts in, 4 counts out, clinging to the only control she has left. The elderly woman watches Linda closely now, not with fear, with recognition. Her gaze sharpens, assessing the performance, the language, the confidence born from years without consequence. Linda finishes her monologue with a final dismissive glance. I expect no further issues, she says. Am I clear? Ava nods once. Yes, ma'am, she says quietly. Linda turns on her heel and walks away, heels clicking triumphantly down the aisle. The cabin exhales again. Someone shakes their head. Someone else mutters, unbelievable. Ava stares at her hands, willing them to stop shaking. Beside her, the elderly woman squeezes gently. This isn't over, she whispers. Ava doesn't understand what she means, but she believes her. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:10. The plane hums on, indifferent, but something has shifted. Linda thinks she has won. She has mistaken silence for surrender, and she has no idea that every word she spoke, every insult, every assumption has just been carefully witnessed, cataloged, and weighed. The reckoning is no longer a question of if, only when. If you've ever been humiliated in public while others stayed silent, if you've ever been punished for kindness, then don't look away now. Like, subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices, because silence stops being weakness and starts becoming power. The cabin grows quieter after Linda leaves. Not the comfortable quiet of sleep or rest, but the uneasy kind that lingers after something wrong has happened and no one knows how to correct it. Conversations resume in fragments, clipped and cautious. People avoid looking toward row 22 now, as if shame might be contagious. Ava keeps her eyes forward. She stares at the seatback screen, unlit and blank, reflecting only a faint outline of her own face. Her reflection looks older than she feels, tired, guarded. Her hands rest in her lap, fingers interlaced tightly enough that her knuckles ache. She doesn't loosen them. Pain, at least, is something she can name. Beside her, the elderly woman sits very still. Her earlier trembling has stopped. Her breathing is slow and even. Her posture, subtle but unmistakable, has shifted. No longer folded inward, no longer apologetic. She looks like someone who has finished listening and has begun measuring. The hum of the engines fills the space between them. Minutes pass. Then a flight announcement echoes softly overhead, informing passengers of altitude, weather, arrival time. The voice is pleasant, neutral, rehearsed, orderly. That word floats through Ava's mind. Order. Is that what this was supposed to be? She swallows and finally speaks, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," she says. The elderly woman turns her head slowly. "For what?" she asks. Ava hesitates. "For causing trouble." The woman studies her, not with pity, not with urgency, but with a steady, searching attention that Ava isn't used to receiving from adults, especially strangers. "You didn't cause trouble," the woman says gently. "You revealed it." Ava frowns, confused. "It didn't feel like that." "No," the woman agrees. "It never does in the moment." She looks forward again, out toward the cabin, toward the orderly rows of seats and silent compliance. "Systems depend on people believing that harm is their own fault," she continues softly. "That way, the system never has to change." Ava absorbs the words slowly, unsure what to do with them. The woman doesn't elaborate. She doesn't need to. Instead, she reaches into her cardigan pocket again and retrieves the small notebook. She opens it, flipping past earlier pages filled with tidy handwriting. Dates, notes, short phrases, names. She pauses, then writes again. Ava watches, curious but careful not to intrude. "What are you writing now?" Ava asks. The woman doesn't look up. "Behavior," she replies. "Language, response patterns." Ava blinks. "Why?" The woman finally meets her eyes. "Because patterns don't lie," she says. "People do." Ava nods, though she doesn't fully understand. Down the aisle, Linda reappears briefly, laughing with another attendant near the galley. Her body language is relaxed, loose. She gestures animatedly, clearly recounting something amusing, perhaps the very incident she caused. She doesn't look toward row 22. She doesn't need to. In her mind, the matter is settled. The younger attendant from earlier passes by once more, slower this time. Her eyes flick toward Ava, then toward the elderly woman. There's hesitation there, guilt, something unresolved. She opens her mouth as if to speak, then closes it and keeps walking. Silence again. Ava shifts slightly in her seat. "Why didn't anyone stop her?" she asks quietly. The question isn't accusatory, it's bewildered. The elderly woman considers this carefully before answering. "Because power is most effective," she says, "when it convinces people they're powerless." Ava exhales slowly. The plane cruises on, smooth and steady, cutting through layers of cloud that stretch endlessly in every direction. From the window, the world looks peaceful, abstract, untouched by what's happening inside. Ava wonders how something can feel so heavy while everything else feels weightless. She thinks of her mother, how carefully she packed that food, how she pressed a kiss to Ava's forehead before dropping her at the airport. "Eat," she'd said. "You'll feel better." Ava doesn't feel better, but she feels awake. Beside her, the elderly woman closes the notebook and rests it on her lap, one hand placed over it protectively. Her gaze moves again across the cabin, not lingering this time, but sweeping, as if taking inventory. Her eyes stop briefly on the airline logo stitched into the headrest ahead of them. Something unreadable flickers across her face. Resolve. Memory. decision. Linda's voice echoes faintly from the front of the cabin again, issuing another routine instruction. Polite, efficient, unaware. Ava watches the woman beside her out of the corner of her eye. "You're not scared," Ava says. It's not a question. The elderly woman smiles, small, knowing. "No," she replies. "I've seen worse." Ava thinks about that. She thinks about how Linda looked so certain, so untouchable, how the other passengers folded so easily into silence, how the system moved on without hesitation. "What happens now?" Ava asks. The woman's smile fades, replaced by something quieter, sharper. "Now," she says, "we let the truth finish arriving." Ava tilts her head. "Truth doesn't feel very fast." The woman chuckles softly. "No, it's not." She looks back out the window. "But it's thorough." Another announcement interrupts them, a reminder about remaining seated, a forecast of clear skies upon landing. Everything is routine, predictable, except Ava feels something different settling in her chest. Not shame, not fear, something steadier, a sense that what happened wasn't random, that it mattered, that she mattered. Linda walks past once more, this time without stopping. She glances at Ava briefly, a look of warning, not concern, then continues on, satisfied. Ava meets her gaze for just a second. She doesn't flinch. Linda looks away first. The elderly woman notices. She says nothing, but her fingers tighten slightly around the notebook. Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city. Proverbs 16:32. The words settle between them, unspoken but present. The plane continues its quiet journey, but the balance has shifted. Linda believes the story is over. The passengers believe it will be forgotten. Ava believes she survived something she shouldn't have had to, and the woman beside her knows, with absolute certainty, that the system has just documented its own guilt. All that remains now is to land. And when they do, silence will stop protecting the powerful. It will expose them. The plane begins its descent. The change is subtle at first, a gentle tilt, a soft shift in pressure, but Ava feels it immediately. Her ears pop. The engines lower their pitch. Outside the window, the clouds thin, revealing land far below, orderly and distant. Linda's voice comes over the intercom once more, smooth and practiced. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our final descent. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and your tray tables are stowed." Her tone is calm, confident, untouched. Ava glances at the elderly woman beside her. She's sitting straighter now, hands folded neatly over the notebook on her lap. Her eyes are alert, focused, not on the window, but on the aisle, on the system. The seatbelt sign dings. Passengers shuffle, adjusting bags, checking phones, preparing to stand the moment they're allowed. The cabin fills with the restless energy of arrival. Relief, impatience, anticipation. Linda moves down the aisle one last time, inspecting seats with the authority of someone who believes she has maintained control from start to finish. When she reaches row 22, she pauses. Not because she has to, because she wants to. She looks at Ava again, not cruelly this time, but dismissively, as if Ava has already been filed away under problem handled. "Everything settled now?" Linda asks flatly. Ava meets her gaze. "Yes, ma'am," she says. The answer is polite. It is also final. Linda nods once, satisfied, and turns to leave. "That won't be necessary," the elderly woman says. Her voice is calm, clear, loud enough to carry. Linda freezes. She turns slowly, irritation flashing across her face. "Excuse me?" The elderly woman unbuckles her seatbelt and stands. In that instant, something in the cabin changes. It's not dramatic. No gasp, no shout, but heads turn instinctively. Postures shift. Attention sharpens. The air feels different. "I'd like the captain and the lead purser at the aircraft door," the woman says. "Now." Linda laughs, a short, incredulous sound. "Ma'am," she says, "we're in final descent. This is neither the time nor the place." The woman doesn't raise her voice. She simply reaches into her cardigan pocket and removes a slim, leather-bound card holder. She opens it and hands one card to Linda. Linda takes it reluctantly. Her eyes flick down, then back up, then down again. The color drains from her face. Around them, passengers crane their necks, sensing the shift, but not yet understanding it. Linda swallows. She starts. The elderly woman speaks again, gently but firmly. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, she says. I am a founding board member and majority shareholder of this airline. Silence crashes into the cabin. Not the awkward silence from before. This one is heavy, absolute. Ava's breath catches. Linda stares at the card as if it might bite her. That's not possible, she says weakly. Board members don't. They fly unannounced, Eleanor replies. That's the point. She gestures lightly around the cabin. To see what happens when no one thinks they're being watched. Phones lift again, this time not out of cruelty, but disbelief. Someone whispers, "Did she say board member?" Another murmurs, "Oh my God." Linda straightens, panic flickering beneath her training. There's been a misunderstanding, she says quickly. I was enforcing policy. I followed protocol. Eleanor tilts her head slightly. You destroyed a child's food, she says, publicly. Linda opens her mouth, closes it. You implied contamination without evidence, Eleanor continues. You used language that assumed guilt, not safety, and you escalated humiliation instead of resolving concern. Each sentence lands with precision. Linda's hands tremble. I was protecting the airline, she insists. Eleanor looks at Ava, then back at Linda. No, she says quietly. You were protecting your authority. The captain's voice crackles over the intercom, confused. Cabin crew, please advise. I'll handle this, Eleanor says calmly, lifting her hand toward the speaker. She turns to Ava. My dear, she says softly, would you stand with me? Ava hesitates. Every instinct tells her to stay seated, stay small. But she rises. The cabin watches as Ava stands beside Eleanor, a teenager in a hoodie next to a woman who suddenly radiates undeniable authority. This young lady, Eleanor says, addressing the cabin now, offered me food because she noticed I hadn't eaten. She acted with kindness. She followed the written rules, and she endured humiliation without retaliation. She pauses. What was destroyed today wasn't a meal. Her gaze locks on Linda. It was this company's values. A murmur ripples through the cabin. Linda's voice cracks. I didn't know who you were. Eleanor nods. That, she says, is the most honest thing you've said all day. The plane touches down with a jolt, tires screaming briefly against the runway. Applause breaks out automatically, then falters, unsure. The seatbelt sign remains on. Eleanor steps closer to Linda. When the door opens, she says, you will step aside. You will not speak to this girl again, and you will submit a written incident report before you leave the aircraft. Linda nods, eyes wide. Yes, ma'am. The door opens. Ground staff wait, and then stop short as Eleanor addresses them by name. Shock spreads. Linda steps back. Ava feels Eleanor's hand rest lightly on her shoulder, steady, assured. For the first time since boarding, Ava feels tall, for nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed, nor is anything secret that will not become known and come to light. Luke 8:17. The truth has landed, and it has brought consequences with it. If you thought this story was about humiliation, you were wrong. It was about revelation, like subscribe and stay with dignity voices. Because justice doesn't raise its voice, it activates. The aircraft door remains open longer than usual. Passengers who expected to stand and rush the aisle hesitate instead, uncertain. The usual choreography of arrival has been interrupted. Something heavier than delay hangs in the air. Eleanor stands just inside the doorway, posture composed, voice low but commanding. Two ground supervisors wait in front of her, listening with expressions that shift from polite confusion to alarm. Linda stands a few steps behind now, not in control, not centered, just present. Ava stays beside Eleanor, hands clasped tightly, unsure where to look. She can feel eyes on her, not the accusatory stares from earlier, but something else now. Curiosity, respect, unease. Eleanor speaks quietly to the supervisors. "I want security footage from boarding through landing," she says. "All cabin audio logs, crew communications, incident reports, immediately." One supervisor nods rapidly. "Yes, ma'am." "And notify corporate compliance," Eleanor continues. "Red protocol." The words move like a key turning in a lock. The supervisor stiffens. "Red protocol?" he repeats. "Yes," Eleanor says. "Now." He pulls out his phone without another question. Linda swallows. What is red protocol?" Ava whispers. Eleanor glances at her briefly. "It's what happens," she says, "when a company has to confront itself." Passengers begin to file out slowly, many glancing back as they pass. Some whisper apologies to Ava, others avoid eye contact altogether. Linda doesn't move. She's waiting for someone to tell her what to do. For years, she has been the one giving instructions. Now the absence of them leaves her exposed. Eleanor turns to her. "You'll wait here," she says. "Security will escort you shortly." Linda nods, lips pressed tight. The cabin empties. Minutes later, the plane is quiet again, but not empty. Two uniformed security officers enter, followed by a man in a dark suit carrying a tablet. His badge reads Corporate Compliance. He stops when he sees Eleanor. "Ms. Whitmore," he says, startled. "We weren't expecting—" "That's the point," Eleanor replies. She gestures toward Linda. "This employee will accompany you," Eleanor says. "She is not to interact with any passengers or crew further." The man nods once. "Understood." Linda opens her mouth, perhaps to explain, perhaps to defend herself. But Eleanor raises a hand. "Not now," she says calmly. "You've said enough for one day." Security escorts Linda down the aisle. Her heels no longer click. They drag. Ava watches her go, heart pounding, unsure what she feels. Relief, shock, something like grief, not for Linda, but for the version of the world Ava thought was normal. Eleanor turns to Ava. "Come with me," she says. They step off the plane together. The terminal hums with movement, rolling suitcases, echoing announcements, the smell of coffee and disinfectant. To most travelers, it's just another airport. To Ava, it feels like crossing into a different reality. They're guided into a glass-walled office near the gate. Inside, several people wait. Airline executives, legal counsel, compliance officers. Some look pale. Others avoid Eleanor's eyes. A screen on the wall flickers to life, displaying live feeds from inside the aircraft cabin. The incident plays back in silence. Linda's words scroll as captions beneath the footage. Every sneer, every implication, every moment of unchecked authority. No one speaks. When the video ends, Eleanor finally sits. "Pattern confirmed," she says. A man clears his throat. "We've reviewed prior complaints involving this attendant," he says. "Most were informally resolved." Eleanor looks at him. "Define informally." He hesitates. "Warnings, transfers, schedule changes. In other words, buried." Eleanor nods once. "And the supervisors who allowed that pattern to continue?" she asks. Another executive answers quietly. "They'll be placed on administrative leave pending investigation." Eleanor's gaze sharpens. "No," she says. "They'll be suspended immediately, with cause." Silence, then nods. Ava sits in the corner of the room, small against the glass wall, absorbing everything. No shouting, no insults, no humiliation in return, just decisions, consequences. Eleanor turns toward Ava again. "Would you like to go home?" she asks gently. Ava nods. "Yes, ma'am." Eleanor smiles faintly. "Good. But first, I owe you something." She gestures for a legal assistant to step forward. The woman hands Eleanor a folder. "This is not compensation," Eleanor says, handing it to Ava. "It's acknowledgement." Inside is a formal letter, a written apology, signed, specific, naming exactly what was done wrong and why. Ava's eyes sting. "I didn't do anything special," she says softly. Eleanor shakes her head. "You did something rare," she replies. "You stayed kind when the world tried to harden you." She stands. "This airline will issue a public statement within the hour," she continues, addressing the room. "Policy revisions will follow. Mandatory bias review. Leadership changes. Full transparency." One executive exhales shakily. "Our stock," Eleanor raises a hand. "Will recover," she says. "Or it won't. Either way, integrity costs less than corruption in the long run." No one argues. The meeting dissolves quickly after that. As Ava and Eleanor walk toward the exit, Ava glances back once at the glass office, the people inside, the machinery of power grinding slowly but surely into accountability. "Is it over?" Ava asks. Eleanor considers this. "For today," she says. "Yes." They step into the terminal light. Crowds move around them, unaware that an institution has just begun to unravel. Ava takes a deep breath. For the first time since boarding, her chest feels clear. Not victorious, not loud, just right. Justice hasn't shouted. It has executed. And it isn't finished yet. The collapse does not look like chaos. It looks like emails. It looks like conference rooms with closed doors and drawn blinds. It looks like carefully worded statements drafted and redrafted until the truth can no longer be softened. It looks like calendars wiped clean and replaced with emergency meetings titled Internal Review and Compliance Audit, Mandatory Attendance. By the time Ava wakes the next morning, the airline's name is already trending. She sees it on her phone before she even gets out of bed. Her screen fills with headlines. Not sensational, but precise. Airline launches internal investigation after mid-flight incident board member confirms unannounced audit flight crew conduct under review amid bias allegations. Ava scrolls slowly, heart pounding. There's a video, shaky, recorded from 3 rows back. She recognizes the moment instantly. Linda's voice, sharp and cruel, slicing through the cabin. Ava pauses it before the food is destroyed. She doesn't need to see that again. Across the city, inside a glass-walled boardroom high above the runway, executives sit in silence as Eleanor speaks. "This is not an isolated failure," she says evenly. "This is cultural." A chart glows on the wall behind her, listing incident reports spanning years. Different flights, different cities, the same language patterns, the same dismissals, warnings ignored, complaints buried. A senior executive clears his throat. "With respect," he begins, "this airline has transported millions of passengers safely." "Safety is not only mechanical," Eleanor interrupts calmly. "It is human." She taps the table once. "When humiliation becomes procedure, safety has already failed." Legal counsel shifts uncomfortably. "Public reaction is accelerating," another executive adds. "Sponsors are asking questions. Shareholders are nervous." Eleanor nods. "They should be." She slides a folder across the table. "Termination notices," she says. "Effective immediately." The room stiffens. "Multiple?" someone asks. "Yes," Eleanor replies, "including supervisory staff who enabled the behavior." A pause. "And Linda Hawthorne?" another voice asks. Eleanor doesn't hesitate. "Her employment has ended," she says, "and her conduct has been formally documented." No embellishment. No gloating. Just fact. By noon, the airline releases a statement. It does not apologize for if anyone was offended. It does not blame misunderstanding. It names the behavior. It admits failure. It promises change. Not in vague language, but with timelines and oversight. The stock drops anyway. Analysts call it a necessary correction. On social media, passengers share their own stories, not just about this airline, but about moments they were spoken down to, dismissed, made small. A pattern emerges, unmistakable and undeniable. The airline's competitors issue quiet internal memos, review cabin conduct, reassess training, avoid exposure. The system learns, not because it wants to, but because it must. Ava's mother calls her before breakfast. "I saw the news," she says, voice tight with concern. "Are you okay?" Ava hesitates. "I think so," she says. "I didn't do anything wrong." Her mother exhales shakily. "I know, baby. I know." They sit in silence for a moment. "I'm proud of you," her mother adds softly. "Not for what happened, for who you were." Ava closes her eyes. At the airport, Linda sits alone in her apartment, staring at her phone as messages stop coming in. The uniform she wore so confidently now hangs untouched in the closet. She refreshes her email again. Nothing. For the first time in years, no one is asking her to enforce anything. No one is deferring to her authority. She tells herself it was unfair. She tells herself she didn't know. But the words replay anyway, her own voice, sharp and absolute, echoing back at her from 1,000 screens. "You people. Learn where you belong." They sound different now. They sound permanent. Back at the airline headquarters, Eleanor signs the final page of the internal report. She pauses briefly, pen hovering. Not in doubt, in thought. Then she signs. The document moves forward, to regulators, to oversight boards, to public record. The consequences extend beyond one employee, beyond one flight. Training programs are dismantled and rebuilt. Complaint channels are reopened. Quiet rules that once protected authority are stripped away. It takes months, but the direction is set. Ava returns to school, trying to focus on classes, on homework, on the ordinary rhythms of teenage life. Some classmates recognize her from the video, most don't. A teacher pulls her aside one afternoon. "I saw what happened," the woman says gently. "You handled yourself with a lot of strength." Ava shrugs. "I just stayed quiet." The teacher smiles. "That's not nothing." Weeks later, Ava receives another letter. This one formal, embossed, heavier in her hands. It details policy changes enacted in response to the incident. Her name is not publicized. Her privacy is respected. At the bottom of the letter is a handwritten note from Eleanor. The world changes when someone refuses to become smaller. "Thank you for standing exactly where you were." Ava reads it twice. She folds it carefully and places it beside the first letter. The airline's CEO resigns quietly before the end of the quarter. No scandal, no spectacle, just an acknowledgement that leadership failed to see what was happening in plain sight. News cycles move on. They always do. But the structure beneath them has shifted. One afternoon, Ava walks past the airport again, this time with her mother. Planes take off overhead, lifting effortlessly into the sky. "Do you hate flying now?" her mother asks gently. Ava watches a jet climb, sunlight flashing along its wings. "No," she says after a moment. "I just see it differently." Her mother nods, understanding more than Ava realizes. Inside one of the airline's training centers, a new video plays for incoming crew members. It isn't dramatic. It isn't sensational. It's quiet. It shows a moment of choice. A voiceover says simply, "Authority does not excuse cruelty. Silence does not erase harm." The camera cuts to an empty aisle, a spilled meal, long cleaned, but remembered. The system did not fall because someone screamed. It fell because someone watched carefully, because someone documented truth, because kindness refused to disappear quietly. Justice did not humiliate in return. It corrected. It rebuilt. And in doing so, it made space for something stronger than power. Dignity. Months pass. not the kind that rush forward in headlines and statements, but the slow, ordinary months where life resumes its rhythm and memory settles into meaning. Ava walks through the airport again, not as a passenger this time, not as a headline, just a teenager with a backpack slung over one shoulder, sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished floor. She moves through the terminal with her mother beside her, the two of them weaving gently through rolling suitcases and overlapping announcements. The airport looks the same. The gates, the glass walls, the long stretch of windows facing the runway. But Ava is not the same. She pauses near a familiar gate, not because she means to, but because something in her recognizes the space. The ceiling lights hum softly. A plane taxis past the window, engines low and patient. Her mother notices Ava slow. "You okay?" she asks. Ava nods. "Yeah, I just remember." Her mother squeezes her hand gently. "You don't have to stay here." "I know," Ava says, "but I want to." They sit, not in the same row, not the same gate, but close enough for memory to breathe. Ava watches the people around her now, a tired father juggling snacks and boarding passes, an elderly man gripping his cane, a flight attendant kneeling to speak softly to a nervous child. Ordinary moments, but Ava sees what she didn't before. She sees who is treated gently, and who isn't, who is believed immediately, and who must explain themselves twice. And she sees something else too. Change. On a nearby screen, a training video loops silently for staff. It's not flashy, not dramatic, just clear. The words scroll slowly. Dignity is not optional. Kindness is not a disruption. Authority exists to protect, not diminish. Ava feels something loosen in her chest. Her phone buzzes. A message. She knows who it's from before she opens it. "Eleanor, I'm at the cafe near Gate C if you'd like to say hello." Ava looks up instinctively, and there she is. Eleanor sits at a small table by the window, hands folded around a cup of tea. Her posture is relaxed now, no notebook in sight, no urgency in her expression. Just presence. Ava stands. Her mother smiles. "Go," she says. "I'll be right here." Ava approaches slowly. Eleanor looks up and smiles. "There you are," she says warmly. They sit together. No ceremony, no power imbalance, just two people sharing quiet space. "I wanted to thank you," Ava says after a moment. Eleanor tilts her head. "For what?" "For not turning me into a symbol," Ava says carefully. "You could have." Eleanor nods. "Symbols are loud. People are sacred." They sit in silence for a bit, watching planes rise and fall. "Do you ever regret it?" Ava asks. "What you did?" Eleanor considers this. "No," she says, "but I regret that it was necessary." Ava looks down at her hands. "I still think about that day sometimes." "That's natural," Eleanor replies. "But remember, the wound wasn't the end of the story." She reaches into her bag and pulls out a folded piece of paper, handing it to Ava. A verse, written in careful handwriting. "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." Micah 6:8. Ava reads it slowly. Her throat tightens, not with sadness, but with recognition. "That's what you did," Ava says. Eleanor smiles gently. "That's what you did." A boarding announcement echoes overhead. Passengers line up. Life moves. Eleanor stands. "I should go." Ava rises too. "Will I see you again?" Ava asks. Eleanor pauses, then smiles. "Every time you choose kindness without shrinking yourself," she says. "Yes." They part. Ava returns to her mother. They walk toward the exit together, sunlight spilling through the glass walls ahead. As they pass a crew briefing area, Ava catches a glimpse of a new generation of flight attendants listening attentively, heads bowed in focus. No arrogance, no impatience, just learning. She hopes it lasts. Outside, the wind lifts slightly as another plane ascends into open sky. Ava watches it climb, free, not because the system was perfect, but because someone refused to let cruelty pass unnoticed. Justice didn't shout. It landed, and then it rested. This story is not about an airline. It is about how easily dignity is crushed and how quietly it can be restored. The Bible reminds us again and again that God sees what systems ignore. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Psalm 9:9. Ava didn't win by overpowering anyone. She didn't shout, threaten, or expose. She endured without becoming bitter. She remained kind without becoming small. And that is a kind of strength the world cannot counterfeit. If you have ever been humiliated for doing the right thing, if you have ever been made to feel invisible while choosing kindness, then remember this: God does not rush justice, but He never forgets it. Sometimes your quiet faith is the very thing that allows truth to surface. Sometimes grace doesn't erase pain, it redeems it. If this story moved you, if you believe dignity matters, even when no one is watching, please like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices. Here, we tell stories where quiet people are seen. Faith anchors justice, and dignity always has the final word. Until next time, walk humbly, love mercy, and never underestimate the power of quiet courage.